In this episode, we talked to Steve Koonin, the CEO and minority owner of the Atlanta Hawks. Steve previously was the president of Turner Entertainment and led marketing at Coca-Cola, two Atlanta thoroughbred brands. We talked to him in front of a live audience at Switchyards Downtown Club in Atlanta. So let's kick into this. So first question I have for you is, you're an Atlanta guy, and you don't hear about too many homegrown Atlanta people in business or in anything.
Yeah,
so
we don't breed well in captivity.
Where'd you grow up? What's your kind of background?
I grew up. Is this one?
Is this on?
I don't think so.
There you go.
That was an elegant start. I grew up in the Emory area and went to the University of Georgia in the 70s, where all you needed was either $79 or a Pulse. I had $79, and all I wanted to ever do was be in the liquor business. I worked in liquor stores all summers, and when I got out of school, I went to work for national distributors, and I got in the liquor business. My life was complete.
But apparently it wasn't. How'd you wind up at Coke?
So if you're pretty good in the liquor business as a salesperson, you usually get picked up by a distillery. So when I was 25, Hiram Walker hired me to help run the Southeast, and they had brands, Canadian Club, Kahlua, Cavassier, and I went and sold to distributors like I used to work for. And one day I got a call from the president of the company who said, "Hey, we'd love for you to come to headquarters and become the head of marketing." It's like, wow, 27 years old, you want me to head worldwide marketing? That's fantastic. And then the light bulb went off in my head. Headquarters is Walkerville, Ontario, Canada. Does anybody know where that is? Do you broadcast into Canada?
We do, yes.
Yeah.
YouTube does.
I'll clean up what I was going to say. Not the most desirable location for a young family. So I said to them, time's not good now. I'll take a pass. Maybe we'll revisit. And they said, "No, you don't understand. We're restructuring the company. Your job's been eliminated." And that was a wake-up moment when they think enough of you at 27 to offer you to run worldwide marketing, but not enough of you to keep you because of a corporate restructuring. So I left, and I literally made a phone call after 5 o'clock one day to the Coca-Cola company, 676-2121. You didn't used to have to dial area codes. Said, "Director of Marketing, please." And guy answered the phone and told him that I was in the spirits business and I was in Atlanta, and I saw a huge opportunity for Coke to become part of the solution to drunk driving. That Mothers Against Drunk Driving was just coming up. This is in the early to mid 80s, and that Coke could lead designated driver programs, and I thought we could grow their volume and their perception in the marketplace. And he thought it was interesting. They had me come in. Guy I called, his name was John Farrell. He went on to become president of Coke China and had several other jobs, and I joined Coke in 1986, and I had 13 jobs in 14 years working for Coke. Running worldwide advertising, sports and entertainment, marketing, repositioned Sprite, did a whole bunch of different type stuff, and had a wonderful time.
That was a great run, right? Those kind of 80s,
fabulous.
early 90s for
Yeah.
Coke?
Yeah, I mean, I caught a wave. And they picked up 3 billion new consumers in India, Russia, China. And so the company was the fastest growing company in the 80s and 90s, one of the fastest growing in the world. And I got to be part of it, which was phenomenal.
So quick question about Coke, and then we'll move on to your other stuff. Obviously, Coke's this behemoth. The sign they put up downtown where they first opened was the last line is the largest consumer brand in the world, and they're 130 years old, and they started 2 blocks from here, which is cool. But are Coke's kind of best days now? Everyone's talking about healthy and no carbonation and all this kind of stuff. Are Coke's best days in the past, or what do you think kind of the future of Coke is?
I think there's a lot of lessons there. I can't tell you. I'll tell you a quick story. I went to Anuga, Germany to a food show with the chief marketing officer. I guess it was 1995 or 1996. And we saw this brand, and it was, the product tasted horrible. Who's going to drink this stuff? They wanted $50 million, and the name of them was Red Bull. And we made a very informed decision. Nobody's going to drink this. Let's go focus on Cherry Coke. And true. And Gatorade. And so Coke has let a lot of beverages come up that they could have acquired, they could have built, they could have duplicated. In fact, the only product Coca-Cola has ever invented is what? Coca-Cola. Everything else, 7-Up with Sprite, Mr. Pibb from Dr. Pepper, on and on and on. So I think their global distribution system is second to none. But I do think they've got to move and continue to move very quickly. Did I mention they're one of our largest sponsors? So I think their best days are in front of them.
I was wondering why you were playing that question so cool. And
I assure you, everybody should stop drinking your beer unless it's a Budweiser.
All right, so you were at Coke for 14 years, right?
Yep.
So from roughly your 20s to kind of maybe late
42.
30s. 42. Why'd you go to Turner?
So I'm at the ironic opening of Phillips Arena, and I saw the president of Turner, and they had just promoted and made some changes, and we were talking about brands and different things. He said, we've got a real problem. TBS and TNT are known by cable operators as T1 and T2. They're running the same programming, they aren't differentiated, and we see this explosion of content and cable channels coming. We need we're looking for a marketer, would you be interested? I work for Coke, I'm not working, no. And then I put my arrogance aside and sat down and spent a day over there and said, this is a really interesting, industry. And I joined when probably TBS and TNT had 55, 60 million homes, and we grew it to about 102 million. It's well on its way to 65 or 70 million homes again with cord cutters. So thank you. But it was really interesting. They had the vision to understand that they had to make these things brands, but we couldn't rename the network. So History Channel kind of connotes who it is, and Comedy Central, you're going to think is probably a funny network, but TBS and TNT were named for the creator, and I don't mean that one, I mean Ted Turner, which street we're on.
Yep.
I mean, he likes naming stuff. And so it was very, very challenging, but we made TNT a drama brand, we made TBS a comedy brand, and we grew the brands from about $1.5 billion to over $7 billion.
So I read somewhere that you're this marketing genius, and you get a lot of credit for the drama and for the comedy side. Is that your what's your superpower? What are you really good at? You're clearly good at something.
Sleeping and eating.
I've tried that.
My family
doesn't pay well though.
Well, it depends. No.
What are you really good at?
I can take fairly complex things and make them kind of simple, and so. It was real apparent to me that there was no network dedicated to drama. You had Lifetime that had melodrama. You had broadcast networks who had a hodgepodge of everything. And the real key was trying to come up with something so simple that not only the consumer, but more importantly, the advertising community could put a finger on it. So, we came up with Kleenex tear jerkers. We created all kinds of business and spin-offs and promotions that brought in huge amounts of money by being able to leverage the brand. And so comedy and drama are about as two broad genres as you can ever have in television. But we were the first to do drama, and we were bigger than Comedy Central, and we did comedy, and then Adult Swim did a different form of comedy. And now, it's established that these are the comedy brands, and now talent can rise to them and see. So I think that kind of simple solutions for fairly complex problems is what I've been able to do.
So I'm not going to let you leave the Turner story without getting at least one Conan story, and I actually have two questions on Conan, one around the pitch of Conan. So let's start there. So you guys are this, who you're competing with is some big networks, right?
So we have George Lopez on the air. Who late night and morning shows are the most profitable programming for broadcast networks. So morning shows, Today's Show and Good Morning America make about $900 million between the two of them. The old late night shows made about $600 million. And there was really very little cable play in there. Now, Jon Stewart was kind of in a field of its own, brilliant show. But you didn't have kind of the big, broad competition where we could go get a younger cable audience and become a value buy against some of the older institutions. And we also saw that Leno and Letterman were in their 60s, and they weren't getting younger and hipper, they were getting older and grouchier. So we love YouTube. They're both unemployed. Anyway, so we got in early with George Lopez, that Warner Brothers, our sister company at Time Warner Turner, was trying to syndicate. We said, let's get into that. And George brought us an interesting audience, a young audience. And then we read about Conan. And we initially just assumed, like everybody, another great business lesson, don't assume anything. And certainly don't assume anything you read in the media. We assumed he was going to Fox. And one day I was reading the news clips and saw that there was a glitch in their negotiations, and picked up the phone and called a guy who knew Conan's manager, and set a meeting with him. And flew out to LA, met at his agent's office at William Morris, and walked in, and I said, Conan.
So this was that hand right there?
That hand. And he started laughing, and we just talked. There were 10 people in the room. The two of us just talked like a first date for 2.5 hours. And we really connected. And what I found out was, for his honeymoon, he and his wife flew to Atlanta, rented a car, and drove Sherman's March to the Sea. Because he was a history major at Harvard. He's a history nut and a presidential history nut. Now, that must have been one hell of a honeymoon. So I wanted to, and I could also see how much pain, and if you remember, this was 2010, Team Coco was one of the, I would say it's one of the internet's first kind of groundswells that came from consumer, as you're doing consumer here. Conan's popularity soared, his final shows set record ratings, and he became this icon of kind of sticking it to the man and standing up for principles. So I could see he was fragile, and he was unique. So our pitch to him was, don't go be another box on somebody else's schedule, own your own show. And more importantly, take advantage of this digital groundswell. And we built Team Coco from literally, organically, what fans did in trying to get him saved. But I wanted to do something that would really, really, really get his attention. So when I came back from LA, I wanted to find some kind of Civil War iconography. And there's a Civil War photographer named Matthew Brady who took a picture of Lincoln sitting in office, and there were very few prints made of that. So I went to my son, who I guess was in his early 20s at the time, said, go online and find me an original Matthew Brady. In 4.5 seconds he did. And the store who had it for sale was in Santa Monica, California, right there. So I asked somebody from our LA office, they went and bought it, and I hand wrote him a note and said, let's make history together. And I sent him a picture of Abraham Lincoln, who was his favorite president, and he said that. And so what I demonstrated to him is I listened to what he said, to the smallest things. It wasn't about me, it wasn't about TBS, it was about him. And so he got that, and he was just floored. And in 6 days, we put together a deal, and he's now in his 6+ season on the air, and more people watch Conan online than watch on TBS. And Team Coco, I think, does a couple of billion views a year, and he's at Comic-Con tonight. Tune in, watch him live, with a delicious Budweiser or Coca-Cola product.
So I want to get onto the Hawks, but quickly, I know you're kind of out of this industry, but being in kind of entertainment, you're never out of this industry. How is, probably a lot of these companies have ideas to disrupt, you at Turner.
Go for it. I could care less.
But where are things going? Where were you seeing things going when you were still there?
Well, it's one of the reasons that I felt comfortable leaving. The average tenure of a network president is 42 months. I was there for 14 years. But I also saw that most businesses look for what's going to kill you, not what's going to nibble at you. And I saw that the business was getting eaten by guppies, not by sharks. And what I mean by that is, we lost 40,000 subs last month. Oh, what? Got 90 million. Lost 47 next month. And after 5 years, it compounded basically to the 7 million that ESPN's lost. And 7 million times $7 times 12 months is a ton of money. I think that's the math answer for any of you math majors. I mean, it's almost $750 million. And so you could see that it was going to contract, and that it's all about consumer control. I mean, television's great. We tell you when you're going to watch it. We tell you what you're going to watch. And then we load it with commercials to disrupt your watching. And you pay us for it. Twice. Once in a cable fee, once in advertising. And so in today's consumer democracy, that has to change. And the problem is nobody knows where it goes. I think it lands, seriously, 70, 80 million households. I'll never get rid of cable because of live sports, and I like having the variety, and I can afford it. And half the people in this room never will pay a cable bill. And that's okay. You know, my parents pay $7 a month for ESPN and never turned it on. Unless they think a Hawks game's on it, then they turn it on, usually a day late. But so it's a real, I would think it's probably, because we used to brag that of all the industries being disrupted, music, radio, print, television was immune, and now television's going through it.
Yep. So why do you leave all that to go to the Hawks? How'd that come about?
So I was having dinner with a guy who owned a small piece of the team, and he said, "Can you help us find a CEO?" And I said, "What about me?" And he said, "You're kidding." I said,
"Sounds like you've talked your way into a few of the jobs." Yeah.
By the way, all kidding aside, keeping your ears open and reacting to opportunities is probably a pretty good way to network and find a job. It's probably a lot better than LinkedIn, because you're dealing with somebody you know. So when I said that, he was kind of taken aback. He said, "Would you really?" And I had always thought that my third chapter, maybe my last chapter, would be civic. And I've been on the board of the aquarium for years before it opened, and helped Bernie Marcus. I'm on 6 public boards, and I have a deep love for the city of Atlanta. And I do believe, while there is some nice materialistic parts of being, CEO of a professional sports team, but I do believe nothing can unify a city better than professional sports. I mean, look what's happened in Cleveland. It literally has changed the persona of the city. And I thought, well, while the aquarium's fantastic, it's not going to be as dynamic. It's not going to have the tension and the focus and the potential to change the landscape of the city as professional sports. So I joined July 15th, 2014, and it's been one hell of a roller coaster ride since.
So I put up the logo earlier talking about the basketball club, but to me, one of the more public things you did since you took over the Hawks or took over as the CEO is rebrand the team and bring back the old Pac-Man logo, which I know I was excited about. I'm sure a lot of other people were. What was kind of you're taking this organization that's been around for many years, had some good years and some rough years. How do you rebrand an organization that's that old and has this kind of, people have their perceptions of it? How do you rebrand it? What was your philosophy when you were thinking about kind of rebranding the team?
Well, the first thing you have to do when you build any brand is understand who you're targeting. If you don't know who you're targeting, you can't really talk to them. And I had been a season ticket holder for many years and have season tickets to all the professional sports in Atlanta, and felt that we had to make a radical, different change. And so the first thing we changed is who we're targeting. We probably are one, if not the only sports team that's going after millennials and multicultural audiences. Most teams go after me, because they think I can afford season tickets. And so if you find underserved audiences, which I think millennials and diverse audiences are for professional sports, then you can get greatly rewarded if you can find the right voice to talk to them in. And so we've built a personality at the Hawks very much through social media that's playful, it's fun, it's irreverent. We've done Tinder night. We had to sell flex plans last year. Doesn't that sound exciting? 10-game plans, flex plans. We're not selling flex plans. Gary Narain, our head of PR, is with me. He came into my office with an idea that I kind of bent a little, but they wanted to do a jersey trade where you can trade in your Laker jersey or your Knicks jersey for a Hawks jersey and theme it around Ashley Madison, which was really topical. And I thought it was great. They wanted to do it around a Lakers game, but the Lakers game was December 14th, and Ashley Madison would have come and gone as a scandal. So we brainstormed working together and came up with the idea that I think was the only way we could get away with it. We found 7 people in Georgia named Ashley Madison. And we shot commercials with them and had them invite people to start a love affair with the Atlanta Hawks. Shh, the other team doesn't have to know. And it was a very ballsy move. You know, here's this thing that is making a lot of noise, and a lot of people weren't happy with us doing it because of the consequences of extramarital affairs, but at the end of the day, that's not what we were advocating. What we were doing was finding a way to talk to a youthful audience in a playful way that basically said, we want to start a love affair. Buy 10 tickets, give us a try. And about 40 million tweets and impressions later, we sold a lot of tickets. And the NBA was actually quite supportive when we were successful. There's a lot of people supportive when you're successful, but it was an unusual approach that, you know, I have a fervent belief that a lot of kids' behaviors and generational behaviors are influenced by television, by cartoons. So when I was raised, it was Bugs Bunny or Disney, and it was very clear, black hat, white hat, good, evil. There was no ambiguity. Today, millennials, a lot of people in this room were raised on South Park, Family Guy, Simpsons, subversive, cynical, always with optimism, but a different voice. So if I'm talking to millennials in the same way I'm talking to me, we fail. And so we had to change our voice and do things like Tinder Night and Ashley Madison, and we have a few other things coming up, which a lot of people really don't understand what the hell we're doing, and that's good. You know, Bleacher Report named us the #1 social media team in all of sports. Sports Illustrated made us #2. And we were the 3rd searched Google team. The Atlanta Hawks were only behind Golden State and Cleveland last year, which is amazing to me. Amazing to me. And it's kind of catching on. And we use club exactly the way you described it. I could not have done a better job than you. It's about inclusiveness. It's about being part of something. And we modeled it after European soccer.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Switchyards. All right. 2 more questions, and then let's open it up. So one is, I read an article that you frequently use a lot of kind of data in your marketing, right? And you mentioned that a little bit, knowing who your customer is. But then obviously you have kind of the art of marketing, which is a lot of the ideas that you just mentioned, and then you have the actual product. So I guess art versus science versus product. How do you, especially with basketball, right? You kind of have to have all 3 of those in sync. If you have 2 but not the other, it might not help. If the team's losing but the marketing's great, you're only as good as that product. So how do you kind of reconcile those 3 things?
Let's use data. So if you're a fan of the Atlanta Hawks, 47% of people say the reason you're a fan is because of our performance on the court. 16% say because of our brand voice. 10% say because of our involvement in the community. 8% say because of our ownership. And literally it's sliced down to another 12% like the in-game experience and environment as a social night out. And if you're not a fan, obviously the in-game experience doesn't matter because you're not going to a game. And so we use facts as the antidote for emotion. You're not wrong, I'm not right. Let's look at the facts. So we start with the facts. And then from the facts, we try to build, how can we build a voice? How can we be unique? How can we twist this so people kind of break through? One of Garen's goals and mine are 50 weeks of relevance. We want to be relevant in the community 50 weeks a year. We figure everybody gets 2 weeks vacation. So we planned our vacation, we planned our goals. And whether it's signing Dwight Howard or trading Jeff Teague or raising a banner or doing something in the community, opening a court, we want to make sure that we're in front of people and we're connecting and we're relevant 50 weeks a year. And so it's all of those things. It's all art, science, intuition, luck. You know, I'm not sure there's been anybody luckier than I am if I don't, you know, if the guy's assistant answers the phone, I probably don't get hired at Coke. I don't get hired at Coke. I'm not building brands at Turner. I'm not building brands at Turner. I'm not writing, you know, I'm not running the Hawks. So literally moments in life kind of change the projection and direction of your life. And I'm a very fortunate guy.
Let's quickly go to some Atlanta questions, a few of them, because you're an Atlanta guy. So you've seen, I read your family's been here for almost 100 years, something to that effect.
Yeah.
What have you seen?
The only people not to buy real estate when it was really cheap.
What have you seen in Atlanta in your kind of lifetime? But I guess more importantly, where do you see Atlanta in the next, 10, 20 years?
I mean, to me, the one thing that's always kind of I got a kick out of, I had a friend growing up who had a farm. You know, a very affluent family, they had a farm. And the farm where we used to go, where there were no parents when we were 16 and 17, and spend the weekend, is Sewell Mill Road, where I lived in East Cobb. And so it took an hour to get to the farm. I thought we were in the country. And that's where we raised our kids. So the sprawl of Atlanta has been unbelievable. Just amazing to watch the growth. We got to get the traffic problem fixed. We've got to reinvent downtown. While this is a very cool space, and I love what you've done with the ceiling.
They actually build new buildings to look like that.
I know, isn't that crazy?
All we had to do was just rip out the ceiling.
Steven Tyler used to say, "You have no idea how expensive it is to dress this trashy." So this is very cool. I love what you really have done with the space. We got to figure out how to. This should be the heartbeat of downtown Atlanta, and that's what we're missing. There is no place for us to have dinner after this wonderful conversation. I'm going to Midtown for dinner because there's no place that I could go 5 minutes from here. And when I say no place, there's one or two, but if you weren't taping, I'd tell you how bad they are. But there's no place to go for dinner. So, we're trying to, one of our goals is to try to renovate downtown and invest billions of dollars in renovating downtown. But we've got to work with the city and state governments, and that's been tricky so far.
What are some of your favorite restaurants in Atlanta?
Well, I like most of everything Ford Fry does. A big fan of Adam Evans, who's now at Breza Cafe at Ponce City Market. I love the innovation that I've seen with Krog Street in Ponce City. So I just think the Atlanta food scene is one of the great stories that probably goes too untold. This is a great dining town, and it just keeps getting better. Staple House and on and on and on. And we drive for food. We have no problem driving a half hour to go to a great restaurant. And I think Atlanta's gotten a little provincial where people don't leave their neighborhoods and try some of these places, and hopefully that'll continue to change.
All right, let's open it up to some questions. Go ahead.
Okay, so Steve, I used to work at Turner, so I have some good memories of you walking in the morning to the building. You always had a good joke.
Yeah.
Like, Friday, I saw you like 4 times, and you always had a good joke, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
I work in a highly seasonal job, and I think you guys also have a season, and I do marketing as well. I was wondering, this is something that's always in my head. How do you keep relevant off-season?
Well, that's what we spend a lot of time on. And a big piece in the off-season's community. We've opened, what we're trying to do is build 25 high quality basketball courts in underserved neighborhoods. And we'll probably never sell a season ticket out of them, and that's great. Build a safe, healthy place for kids to play basketball. And then when we have 25 of them, now we have a platform to go do other things. So one of the things we're going to do with our network of courts is we're going to partner with a company called Vision to Learn and bring free eye exams or free glasses to kids in the communities. Because I can't imagine, as a kid who's worn glasses virtually all his life, how horrible it would be to be in school and not be able to see the board. So we want to go do these things, but we also want to tell people and not to take credit, but for them to understand that this, when you read players making 25 million, there's another side to it. So yeah, there's a ton of money involved, but there's another side involved. And our ownership group, led by Tony Ressler, believes this is a community asset. And so connecting to the community is a very good way of being relevant. Our players are very popular in a very good way. 5 of the top 10 Q scores in all of sports are NBA players, I would argue. LeBron, Kobe, Dwayne Wade, et cetera, the most popular athletes in America today. And Atlanta is a great NBA town. We were number 5 in the ratings for the NBA finals, and obviously, unfortunately, we weren't in the finals. So people love the sport, so it's finding those connection points and continuing to connect with people.
Real quickly, what are some of your favorite non-sports brands that you kind of take inspiration from?
I love Apple. I have 9 iPads, and I do. I like them. They can come out with anything new, and I'd buy it. They can come out with Apple Toast, and it's like, I gotta have an Apple toaster. And I think they've done a brilliant job. And I love toys. I bought the new Amazon Alexa. Does anybody have it? What do you think of it?
She controls my life.
Okay. Could you come to my house? Because she can't do anything for me except tell me the weather, but I ask her like 12 times a night. Alexa, what's the weather? What will the weather be? Where will the weather be in Jackson Hole, Wyoming? I'm not going there, but it gives me somebody to talk to. My kids are out of the house. So I think Amazon's also done an incredible job of, I had to go look to find something, and I went on account history. And it's like, holy smokes. We have a UPS truck coming every day to the house with stuff we don't need. Good for you, Amazon. So they've done a great job.
So you've been pretty successful in 3 very different industries. How have you been so successful, and how do you actually, when you enter a new industry, how do you get acclimated to those environments?
Well,
You've been so
he
successful.
said I was semi-successful and then so successful. Decide which one it is. I'd rather go with semi if you don't mind. And the question was, how can you go to 3 disparate industries and have success? Is that fair?
Yeah, fair.
And so I think that there's kind of core principles that run every business. I think the first is strategic thinking. You better be able to make a plan. I think leadership and being able to talk and communicate with people. I don't like wandering around. 2 things happen when I wander around, managed by walking around. I either find the snacks or I go sit in the people I'm the most comfortable's office. And so about 15 years ago, I started something called a bull session. And every month, I will sit with all employees who are not officers, VP, are not invited, and I will answer any question you ask me 100% honestly. No, and if I can't answer, I'll say, guys, I can't answer. And that really connects me to people, and they feel like they know what's going on. And so I think leadership. And then managing assets, managing talent, whether it's Conan O'Brien or Dwight Howard, they're talent. They're what people pay for. So it's not about us, it's about them. So knowing how to manage. So I do think there's 4 or 5 galvanizing principles that if you learn, you can go do any business. And I think working at Coke in the 80s and working in cable television in the early 2000s were greater than any university on earth. So somebody said, I've never learned anything while my mouth was going. So trying to listen, and I'm also a voracious reader. I send articles and clip and collect, but it's always back to the same things: strategies, leadership, making consumer connections, relevance, managing talent. And so far it's kind of worked. Yes, sir.
So you talked about Turner being nibbled away by,
Not Turner, television distribution.
Turner, okay, television.
Do you work at Turner?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay, yeah, then Turner.
So I wonder, as the CEO of the Hawks, how do you see eSports and the rise of eSports, particularly with millennials? And I know that there have been a lot of cross-pollination between the NBA and eSports, particularly with TBS. And do you have any thoughts on that? Or where the
Well, I applaud TBS for getting into esports because TV should be, we shouldn't be deciding in TV, or they, I guess now, they shouldn't be deciding what's important in a consumer democracy. Fans decide. And the greatest part of television is also the worst part. You get a report card the next morning. Every morning I would find out if I'm good or if I suck, you know, because the ratings would come out and they're precise. And so in esports, they saw that there is this fairly significant group of people who are into the sport. And what the brilliance is, instead of paying a league like the NBA billions of dollars, they went and partnered with William Morris, IMG, and they created their own league. And if they're right, in 5 or 10 years, that could be a multi-billion-dollar asset. The UFC sold for $4 billion this week. They paid $2 million for it in 2000. So I think they've done the right thing. I think the big question is, what's going to be the one that hits? Because is it, you know, League of Legends? Is it, you know, Madden? Which one? And I don't think anybody knows that.
Do you think it's going to help traditional sports viewership, or do you think it could be a threat?
I think it's going to be more successful on Twitch than it ever will be on television. Because I think, again, we're in personal curation today. You decide, do you work for Twitch?
No, I'm in that industry, so yeah.
I think you're in a very good industry. I think the future's incredibly bright for personalization. So if you like that, there's a place where you can go on Twitch and find it, where TBS is going to be showing you 50 other things during the week. But I do applaud them because they're making it bigger. And advertisers have come in with very big money. I think they did over $10 million worth of ad sales.
I read something that at Y2K, I wanted to hear about your marketing stunts, but Y2K you investigated when you were at Coke at the time, right? Of putting lasering the Coke logo onto the moon or something?
Yeah.
I want to hear about this, but it was so powerful it was going to cut an airplane in half.
I hate Google. Because it brings...
It's all out there. It's all out there.
Oh my God. It's like, yeah, so... I'm a voracious reader, like I said. So I'm reading an article one day, and the headline is, "The moon is 6 inches closer to the Earth." That's pretty interesting. I'd like to see who measured that. You know, do you have a tape measure? I'd drive to go see that, pay a few bucks. And I just started reading the article, and it was a scientist at the University of Texas, El Paso, that measured. So I found his name and found, again, I don't know how I found him, but I found him. And I said, how did you know? He's this nonchalant scientist. Oh, we shot a laser up to the moon, it reflected back, we measured the duration of time that it took, we multiplied, and it's like, so you could measure it, huh? And I said, could you see the dot from the laser on the moon? He said, yeah. I said, so if we got a lot of lasers, could we create a pattern on the moon that could be seen? He goes, I think we can. So I flew out to the University of Texas, El Paso, and spent a few days with him, came back, wrote a pitch, gave it to the chairman of Coca-Cola, who gave me about $500,000, and we started working on it. And so the idea was, everybody was looking for giant turn of the millennium ideas, Y2K ideas, you know. And so the idea would be that on December 31st, 1999, when the moon came up, it would have a Coke logo on it, wishing you a happy new millennium. And could have worked. But the amount of laser power we would need so you could see it could probably take down the moon. So I was so excited, so I went back out to UTEP. I'll tell one quick story. I went back out to UTEP, and I spent like a week and a half out there, and I had all these people with me from Coke, and man, we were sold. So I came home. My son, I think, was like 11 at the time. Where have you been? I missed you. So, well, Daddy's working on a very big secret project, but I'll tell you, we're gonna advertise on the moon. We're gonna write on there Coca-Cola, and it's gonna be incredible. Everybody in the world's going to be able to see it. And out of his mouth goes, what if it's cloudy? I had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and spent weeks with scientists. And the little son of a bitch, we never thought of that. So I sent him to his room. He ought to be out in a week or two. But yeah, so long story short, it was an audacious, silly idea. And when they did a profile on the new Coke chairman, Doug Ivester, it was done in Fortune, he talked about audacious idea and changing the culture at Coke. So it dies, 1999. And then comes Google. And somebody's writing a story about me in television, like 6 years later, and they found it. And so it is, the moon has, advertising of the moon has been chasing me. However, vindication in January of 2015. NASA put a portrait of the Mona Lisa on the moon. So I was slightly ahead of my time.
But how pissed are you that they beat you to it, though?
I mean, with this kind, I got a better story. You know,
That is true.
I got a better story.
So your son's a legend, huh?
My son is something else.
I think we got time for one more question.
So, great just conversation today. With the rise of live stream, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and people bringing their phones, how are you all handling that at Atlanta Hawks? For those that are paying for cable, I'm a Gen Xer, and I don't like to pay for cable. So how are
If
all-
you want to watch a basketball game broadcast from somebody's phone, knock yourself out.
Are getting into that with the Facebook Live?
Yeah,
YouTube Live?
absolutely, absolutely. We had 2 meetings about it today. You probably see this fat little face on a lot more Facebook Live stuff, because why not give people a view into, you know, I mean, there are some fairly interesting things that we do. And we've done some press conferences on Facebook Live, and we want to create more content. We want to, you know, we want to be part of that relevant conversation. So I think all of these tools are great. But we're in a delicate balance. We want to protect our rights fees for the games, but we want to surround you on a lot of other things. And the NBA has been by far the most progressive sport. It's the first one over 1 billion vines. NBA pre-games now will be on Twitter. That announcement was yesterday. So there's a tremendous amount of digital connection to the NBA. You had a question. I don't want to be rude.
No, I was going to ask about the new green color that's used in your colorway. Was there a lot of trepidation or worry about like any kind of negative feedback? I think aiming towards the millennials, you guys knew that the millennials would probably be okay with it. Or were you worried about like some older fans not liking the green?
So, worried, no. I don't think anybody over 35 by law should be allowed to wear a jersey. And actually, that Volt Green is an homage to the early 70s. Our uniforms look like that when a guy named Pete Maravich, who's probably the most prolific scorer in the history of basketball, he scored over 40 points a game in college without a three-point line. Played. So that's what the Hawks uniforms had that. So we took 3 colors. We took Volt Red, Torch Red, in an homage to the 1996 Olympics. Could you stand up for me, sir? Our model is wearing a beautiful Hawks t-shirt from the Hawks t-shirt collection featuring Torch Red. Oh, he got a free one because it says Kia on the back.
He didn't buy that.
Didn't buy
shit.
it.
That's too bad.
I appreciate it. I didn't say you did it. You didn't commit a crime. You didn't buy a freaking t-shirt. You got it for free. Thank you for coming. You're more than welcome. Thank you.
The free shirts have gotten better. They used to be triple X. And
No, well, what's wrong with that? Wow, what a negative we're ending on. Be careful, Killer Mike.
I'm not going to
Just
say
be
that to him
careful.
for sure.
Yeah, his name's Killer. Mine's Puffy. We good?
We're good.
Good.
That's all. Thanks, Steve.
Guy,
Koonin.
thank you for coming.
Perfect. Not bad. Thanks. What are you going to eat?
I apologize. I got to go to a business dinner, but thank you so much for coming. And I hopefully
You guys can hang out for a little bit. Tanner, music.
drink all of his beer and Coca-Cola products. Bye.